All right. Good evening, everyone. We are the Tripwire podcast, part of the Triple Play Fantasy family, which is now part of the Fantasy Points Media Group. We're here with you every Monday night around 8 p.m. Eastern on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. We're here to talk about waiver wire pickups, get you ready for next week already. We're already on to week 12. And like I said, you can catch us on YouTube. Best way to support us is to subscribe to the Triple Play Fantasy YouTube channel. And then you can also follow us on Twitter as well. And Alex and Toby, how are you guys doing tonight?
Can't complain. Back another Monday.
Yeah, another Monday, another grind. Birds keep winning, so season's getting a little better for me.
Awesome. And we have a very special guest tonight. So he's the co-host of the Drinking and Talking Fantasy Football podcast, the Ball Blast Football podcast, and then he's the weekly DFS guest on the Harris Football podcast, the super talented master of fantasy football musical videos and impressions, Jake Trowbridge. How's it going tonight, Jake?
It is going, Zach. Like, we made it through 11-ish weeks of football, and I feel like I'm not on the verge of crippling doubt every week. So I feel like it's ultimately a win.
Sounds good. So a quick question though. Why is Gronk your favorite tight end, and how long do Legos stay in your stomach?
Rude. You bring me on a podcast. You set me up out of the gate for this. Context any listener who doesn't realize a couple of years ago, coming into the 2020 season, I said, there's no way Gronk's going to be a top 8 fantasy tight end. If he is, I'll eat my face, a Lego mold of my face. And he tied with Noah Fant as the tight end 8 that year. I didn't eat Legos because I don't have a death wish. I did have a video for him. I posted a salute to Gronk. I felt like that was necessary.
No, it was fantastic.
Shout out to him. He's like tight end 3 right now in points per game, technically. So way to go, Gronk.
Yeah, and disclaimer, do not eat Legos out there. Anyone's listening.
Please.
Don't do that. But on a slightly more serious note, you do a lot of amazing music videos, all themed around fantasy football. Which one's been your favorite so far to create?
You know, it's always one of those things where like the most recent one is my favorite just because I get bored of things so quickly. So anything in the vault, like your old news. So the one I did recently was a parody of REM, Losing My Religion, called Losing by a Smidgen. That feeling you get when you're down by like a half a point and you're just hoping for that stat correction. So that was a good one. Because I shouldn't say good. God, how egotistical did that sound? I would say so. It was fun because like I stopped posting some of those on Twitter because I got the DMCA takedown notices. They're like, don't use that music. I was like, but it's a parody. So I had to start like making the music part of it too, along with the rest of it. So that was entertaining to do.
Oh, I had no idea. But yeah, if for those of you out there who have no idea what we're talking about, Jake is phenomenal at making music videos. Parodies with fantasy football, so follow him on Twitter and check those out. They're hilarious. I haven't seen a bad one yet, so keep them coming.
Thanks.
And then, if you guys can believe it, it's already Thanksgiving this week. We're going into week 12 fantasy football. So we only got 3 games left, so no pressure as you guys come down to the playoffs. But what is everyone's favorite Thanksgiving side dish if you could only choose one? We'll start with Alex.
Oh, I was not expecting that one. Should have anticipated, but probably to go with the stuffing. Can't go wrong with it.
Classic.
The homemade stuffing.
Of course. How about you, Toby?
I love a good homemade mac and cheese on Thanksgiving. I get like 3 plates of that. Yeah.
Nice.
I'll say your favorite and you say 3 bites.
3 plates. Oh, 3
plates.
Plates. My bad. It's been a long day, guys.
He gets the whole bowl to himself.
Monday.
And Jake, how about you?
I feel like I'm missing out. I don't know that I've ever had like homemade mac and cheese as part of a Thanksgiving thing. I feel like that's a big miss on my part. Green bean casserole, though, that's the steady Eddie on my end. I love me some green bean casserole.
So I think I got to be boring and plain, but just good classic mashed potatoes. Sweet potatoes are good too, but mashed potatoes, nice and rich and creamy. Can't go wrong with whatever meat you're choosing to serve on Thanksgiving. All right. Well, with that, we're going to get into week 12, which is Thanksgiving week. So we're talking about players that are rostered in less than 50% of ESPN leagues. Week Week 12 buys this week are 2 teams, the Arizona Cardinals and the Kansas City Chiefs. So you probably have a lot of players on those teams. So double check your rosters. And then looking ahead to Week 13, there's 4 teams on bye, which is always fun as we get close to the playoffs. We have the Carolina Panthers, Cleveland Browns, Green Bay Packers, and Tennessee Titans, which, again, a lot of fantasy starters on those teams. So plan ahead. Thanksgiving games this week. So we have 3 matchups on Thursday during the day, afternoon, and evening. We have the Chicago Bears and the Detroit Lions to start off, Las Vegas Raiders and the Dallas Cowboys in the afternoon, and then the Buffalo Bills and New Orleans Saints. So make sure you guys set your lineups accordingly, get them in early this week, and if you can, try to avoid putting them in your flex spot, as everyone always tells you. Might not be possible with this many games going on, but try best you can just to give yourself more flexibility with injuries. But with that, we're going to get right into quarterbacks, and he is our graphic today, thanks to the wonderful Tobe, our graphics master, is Cam Newton, first start back this season with the Carolina Panthers, in case you've been living under a rock and didn't realize he's back in the NFL. And this week he is going to be at Miami, 37.9% rostered right now. And Jake, how are we feeling about Cam Newton after one start?
I feel great. I mean, I was encouraged after his 10 snaps that he played in that initial game back, where he ended up with 2 touchdowns, 1 rushing, 1 passing. And so much so that I picked him up last week for the revenge game against Ron Rivera, which it bore some fruit. He looked better than I thought he would look. I mean, not everything was perfect. Don't get me wrong. There were some odd throws, as is always the case with Cam, but he got it done on the ground. Again, another rushing touchdown. You love that because that's his floor. You hate it if you're a CMC manager, but you love it for Cam. And like I said, I think he looked good enough throwing the ball. And he gets a matchup against Miami this week, so you love that. They're the 5th most fantasy points allowed to the quarterback, coming off the league worst Washington team, but it's not too much of a downgrade for him this week in that department. So I'm a big fan.
Awesome. So I have a little concern about his remaining schedule. I wanted to see how that factors into your fab, what you would bid. So like you said, he has a good matchup this week against Miami. He's on bye next week for week 13. He's got a good matchup week 14 with Atlanta. But then I think he has a pretty bad playoff schedule for looking ahead. I don't know if that's too far ahead, but he's going to be at Buffalo versus Tampa Bay and then at New Orleans in the playoffs. So with that factored in, how do you feel about what you should bid on for fab?
I would have felt worse about the Buffalo matchup a few weeks back. I think they've shown that there is some light there for your fantasy quarterback if you have to start them. It's not that they're impenetrable now, which is how it looked at the beginning of the season. It's still not great, obviously, like you said. But in terms of if you are in a position where you're fighting and scraping your way into the playoff, I'm using, half of my fab on Cam. Admittedly, understanding he has a bye the following week, but if you need every win you can get, then I'm blowing a whole bunch of fab. If you're not in that position, then you probably don't really need Cam that badly. But with all of the injuries happening, maybe Justin Fields, if you were desperate and having to start guys like him, Cam Newton's still going to be a 20% fab guy at this point, because who are you waiting around for, I guess?
Fair enough. And then Tobe, I kind of wanted you to talk about Jimmy Garoppolo. He had a solid game this past week. Now he gets to go against Minnesota in San Francisco. He's only 11.7% rostered. He's looked really good actually the last few weeks. Are you feeling encouraged to stream with Jimmy or not so much?
Yeah, I am feeling encouraged with Jimmy. I mean, he's showing his best effort to hold off Trey Lance, as many of us want to see Trey Lance. But Minnesota, they're not a good defense. If you need a streamer, it's between him and Cam for me to pick up a stream this week for week 12. Say you have Mahomes and you're looking for one, or Kyler might not play again, and he's on bye, so you could look to replace him there. And then his playoff schedule is amazing. If you're struggling that bad at quarterback, I mean, he gets an Atlanta team that can't stop anything, can't even score, a Tennessee team, and then Houston, who for some reason look good against Ryan Tannehill, but they're still not a great team. So pushing into the playoff, getting every win you can, and then sneak in and still have Jimmy Garoppolo as your leading quarterback and can put up some points. I think you could spend whatever you have left, or just a little bit of what you have left on him to get him this week on your team.
Awesome. And then we got some news right before we came on about Justin Fields. I guess it's not a serious rib injury. Hopefully, they're still doing testing, but they believe Andy Dalton is going to get the start. Alex, would you be comfortable rolling out Andy Dalton on Thanksgiving Day, or is that a hard pass?
A hard pass, especially if Allen Robinson still isn't back. Not that he's been good by any means this year, but that's just one less weapon to throw to. Darnell Mooney, he's going to see another 15 targets again, but you don't want to rely on your QB just to keep peppering a second-year guy unless he's that elite. I'd absolutely take a shot at Cam. You know me, want a quarterback who can run. Cam Newton has that floor to be a QB1 the rest of the year. If I'm desperate for a QB, he's a guy I'm swinging for the fences with.
Fair enough.
I got tagged in an interesting stat for the New Orleans defense that Cam plays in the playoffs too this week. Their quarterback run percentage, effectiveness is over 200%. Somebody tagged me in that because I was asking about if I should start Hurts or Burrow, and people told me Hurts. I didn't start Hurts, might I add, but it was on. I can't think of the name, but I'll shout them out after this. But it was 284% on New Orleans defense giving up points to the quarterback when they're running the ball. So there's something else for Cam for fantasy championships. I hope you don't have to start him in your fantasy championship, but if you're desperate,
so weird, because they're so used to practicing against the man Taysom Hill. You'd expect them to be a little more well-versed in that area.
But I mean, the last two times the Saints gave up 200 yards on the ground, Jalen Hurts this year and Jalen Hurts last year. He has their number right now.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right, so less exciting, though, is our running backs this week. So I'm just going to go through the list. We're not going to talk about all of them. We have Alex Collins, 48.6% rostered. Jeff Wilson Jr., 48.5% rostered. Alexander Madison, 36.3% rostered. Devontae Freeman, 34.7% rostered. And Sony Michel is 24.3% rostered. So I kind of want to have Jake, if you wanted to highlight Jeff Wilson Jr., he got a lot of work. Just missed a touchdown. Let's say Eli Mitchell, we don't know what's going on with him. He just had surgery on his finger. He could be back this week. He might not be. How do you feel, I guess, going into now week 12 with Jeff Wilson?
I don't love it, but if you are scraping by for an RB2, you could do a lot worse as a fill-in guy for this week. It was encouraging. 19 rushing attempts. That's great. Like you said, just missed out on the touchdown. Debo kind of was in there snatching some opportunities away from him, which I didn't expect. I'll be honest, not to that extent, certainly. And I don't know that they do that with Debo again. I think that Shanahan would probably switch it up a little next time. And I think Wilson would, presuming that Mitchell's out, would get an even better opportunity share, especially in the red zone. So I'm okay with it. I'd much rather have a guy like A.J. Dillon, obviously, which you probably can't get at this point. But, if you're comparing somebody like that, it's rough. But Wilson can do you for a week.
Yeah, there's just not a lot right now on the waiver wire of startable players. We fortunately didn't have any significant injuries to any players that their backup is not more than 50% or less than 50% rostered. So that's the kind of what I wanted to highlight. Jeff Wilson after a mediocre first weekend.
Is Ty Johnson over 50%?
There's no way Ty Johnson is, but
because Michael Carter's going to miss the next 2 or 3 weeks with a low ankle sprain. So if Ty Johnson's out there too, he's another guy that you could blow probably. At this point, it's week 11. You probably don't have much fab left, but he's probably going to be a big name as well. He's a good PPR guy. I know he plays for the Jets, and you don't want much of the Jets offense, but he's going to be a starting running back in the NFL, so he's fantasy relevant to an extent.
Speaking of the Jets, perfect segue to go to our wide receivers. Wanted to highlight, we've talked about him at least a month now. He was even our graphic a few weeks ago, is the great rookie Elijah Moore. And Alex, I don't know how he's only 40.7% rostered. So he's available in 60% of leagues right now, which is insane. How are we feeling? Obviously you want to pick him up. I guess the question is, do you feel comfortable starting him this week? And then how much would you bid on him if he's not already on your team?
However much fab I've left, I would go all in on him. said it a couple weeks back. He is the floor, just like Bateman, to be an wide receiver 2 for the rest of the year. Since the bye week, Moore has seen at least 6 targets every game. Seen the volume, earns the targets. 2 of the last 3 weeks, he's put up at least 25. He's producing with that. At this point, it's scraps or more scraps. So if you can get a guy who's actually going to be a viable option for the last few weeks and the playoffs, absolutely go for it. Just whether you have $1, all your fab, if you just sat around all season, didn't play the waivers at all, just throw it all in there on Moore. You got nothing to lose at this point.
Yeah, it's crazy to think, but in the last 5 weeks, so going all the way back to week 7, he's the wide receiver 6 in the NFL right now. Now, some of that's scoring in garbage time, but hey, it still counts, and it's the Jets, so they're probably going to be in a lot of garbage time anyway. So, I'm honestly shocked that he's available in that many leagues, and I would definitely feel comfortable at least putting him in my flex. In my home league, I personally did not start him this week, and I regret that. Fortunately, I pulled off the win, but I will not be making that mistake again this season.
He looks a little bit quarterback proof as well. I mean, he's seen 4 different guys this season now, and he's produced with at least 3 different guys these past weeks.
He's not Zach Wilson proof yet. So
we haven't seen him with Zach Wilson.
That's
That could scare a little bit, but I mean, still, Josh Johnson, Mike White, and even Joe Flacco, he's producing.
And people were knocking him for saying, oh, he's only a slot receiver. He's played 2/3 of his snaps out wide. So he's already pushed that narrative into the ground. So it's wheels up for him. He's going to be a startable wide receiver 2 at worst for the rest of the year.
And I guess, Jake, do you feel that way too? Let's say Zach Wilson comes back. We have no idea yet if he will. Would you still feel comfortable starting him, as we haven't really seen him perform well with Zach Wilson yet, or is at this point it doesn't matter? You don't want to miss those potential points.
Yeah, that's what's scary. It's like, the idea of leaving those points on your bench again in some instances. Yeah, that's frightening. But I am nervous about Zach Wilson coming back and what the impact would be. I don't wish a guy to stay away for his actual career, but like just for the rest of this season, if you could find a way to learn from the sidelines while watching Joe Flacco throw to Elijah Moore, that would be pretty fantastic.
Get him fully healthy.
That's right.
We got a shout out from Faith. I want to say Jake. So
Faith.
From our buddies at Club Fantasy. How's it going, Faith? All right. So going from the exciting Elijah Moore all the way down to a wide receiver who's rostered in 1.4% of leagues is Cedric Wilson. If you don't know who that is, he plays for the Dallas Cowboys, and we're only talking about him because they're playing Thursday for Thanksgiving, and the top 2 wide receivers, Amari Cooper, is already not going to play due to COVID, and then we believe at this point that CeeDee Lamb is going to be out because he had a concussion yesterday, and it's very unlikely that he's going to get cleared in time. Potential, but very unlikely. So, Tobe, I guess this is probably more for deep leagues or if you're super desperate, but would you roll out Cedric Wilson this week?
If I'm in a deep league, yes, I would. This Cowboys offense looked poor against the Chiefs defense that we didn't think was good coming into this week. And they get a Las Vegas team that has a good pass rush, but their back end doesn't look that great. And I could see a lot of attention going towards Michael Gallup and Dalton Schultz this week. So having Cedric Wilson on your team in a deep league looks great. I probably wouldn't spend any fab on him. He played 63.7% of snaps with 4 catches on 7 targets this past week. And in the past 3 out of 5 games, I say 5, but technically 4 because the Atlanta game was such a blowout that he didn't really see much of the field because he was dealing with the injury himself. But he's received 5 or more targets in those 3 out of 5 games. And with no Lamb, with no Cooper, I could see his target share going into that like 25 to 28% range. And in the Dallas offense, that looks like it needs to get back on track. And I think when what's probably a potential shootout on Thanksgiving, I'd want to start Cedric Wilson this week in a deeper league. Even maybe if you have Cooper and Lamb on your team somehow and are digging at the bottom of the barrel, Cedric Wilson doesn't look bad.
Do we think Tony Pollard could be something? I know we already talked about running backs, but that just got me thinking, like, do you think that Pollard would get out there then a little bit more? Because I think that he might be an interesting flex guy if you're desperate.
I think seeing the amount of drops last week from Wilson, Brown, and Malik Turner, I could see them working Pollard and Zeke in the backfield at the same time a lot more this week.
I mean, we don't even know how healthy Zeke is.
Yeah, and Zeke had the injury last week, but Pollard's way above 50%.
Oh,
He's got to be.
Yeah, we talked about him, I think, week 2 or week 3 when everyone's getting real excited, and he hasn't done much since, but he actually hasn't been that bad. But yeah, he is above 50%. But if he is available out there, it's a good point. Definitely double check because I think even with all the injuries going on, he could see a lot more work. Even if Zeke is healthy enough to start, I think he'll take over some snaps. And like I said, maybe
I like that, Jake. That was good.
Be quick thinking on my feet here.
I didn't even think about Pollard.
All right. So then, Alex, you are our tight end extraordinaire this season. So a lot of the same guys we've been talking about are on the list this week. So we got Tyler Conklin, still under 50%. He's at 42.2. Darren Arnold, as we all hyped him up last week. Now he has 0 targets after crushing it for almost a month. But he's at 40% rostered. Then we have Evan Ingram, who's playing tonight. His game just started, 26.7% rostered. And Cole Kmet, who, again, didn't look phenomenal, but a lot of weirdness with the QBs this week. He gets Detroit, though, this week, and is 12.4% roster. But we haven't really talked about Evan Ingram much this season. So I know you're an Eagles fan, Alex, but how are we feeling about Evan Ingram going against the Philadelphia Eagles this week?
Well, through weeks 1 through 10, the Bears gave up the most points to tight ends with 12.7. Then Troutman put up a 20 spot before getting hurt. Ingram's been on the field a lot since he returned from injury, his never-ending stints on the injured list. So if he makes it healthy through next weekend, he's probably going to be a top 5 guy. Tight end, you're looking for non-zeros. Against Philly, he's guaranteed at least 5 to 7 targets, 50 yards, 2 drops, including a drop touchdown.
Fair enough. Yeah, there's not a lot out there, and we've talked about a lot of guys. That's why I want to highlight Ingram, especially just the fact that he's going against the Eagles, which are literally the best matchup for tight ends this year, which is insane.
It's actually pitiful, the linebacker lack of coverage. Like
TJ Edwards looked pretty good.
He did look good. And he got rewarded with that nice little extension, but
yeah,
Troutman still torched us.
By the way, guys, the Buccaneers have already scored.
Impressive.
Chris Godwin, 13-yard touchdown.
There you go.
Probably going to see like 4 more of those throughout the game.
In this quarter.
Hopefully not. I need Tom Brady not to do well for Scott Fishbowl or Daniel Jones just to light it up. Either way, I don't feel good. So before we get into DSTs, which always makes people feel good talking about DSTs, I want to talk about Monkey Knife Fight real quick. So if you've never played before, we have a special code. Use Triple Play if you're a first-time user, and you can get your first deposit
matched up to $100.
Yes,
I got you. I got you, Zach.
Appreciate it. If you haven't played before, it's a lot of fun. It's basically you're basically playing props for different players, whether it's points, yards, touchdowns, what have you, and you can do a bunch of different sports, not just football. So if you're already out in the playoffs, our condolences, but it's okay. You can still have fun. You can still make some money. And if you're still doing well, then just make some extra money as well. So just make sure you use code Triple Play to get that deposit match. All right. So going into DSTs, not just another kind of okay week. We got the Philadelphia Eagles going against the Giants. They're 12.5% rostered. We have the Chicago Bears at Detroit on Thanksgiving at 10.8% rostered. And then the Jacksonville Jaguars versus Atlanta. They're only 0.9% rostered. They're one of those deep league ones. Jake, do any of those speak out to you, or is it just rough?
No, it's just rough. There was a part of me that wanted to attack the Bears defense for this week, and then that was before the Khalil Mack injury. And so now I don't know. None of this looks good. I would still probably lean with the Bears if I was really in desperate need of that, just because, I don't think Tim Boyle is not vulnerable to throwing some interceptions and taking a handful of sacks. So you could do worse, I suppose, than the Bears.
Yeah, I do see a defense on there that scored touchdowns in 3 of the last 4 games.
I was about to say the same thing.
And getting some sacks. It might be
that Philadelphia Eagles.
That little team in Philly going against Daniel Jones and the Giants. Should be good to force a couple turnovers.
I think I'd still have to lean the Bears just a little bit because, I mean, Tim Boyle edges out Daniel Jones just a little bit. But I don't know. We once we saw this week in the Bears game, they picked on the right tackle of the Ravens pretty heavily with Robert Quinn. And with him moving to the side where Khalil Mack was before he went on to IR, Taylor Decker Panay Sewell was playing right tackle for the Lions, didn't he? So, I mean, he could have some problems getting into the backfield, but Tim Boyle is just not it. 78 yards and a pick against the Browns. Bears.
Yeah, so a little more favorable of a matchup.
Yeah.
All right. So we talked about a bunch of different guys, some exciting, some they're okay. Depends on what size league you're in, but we also need to recommend people to drop if you guys are going to be picking all these different players up. So this was a fun one this week because I think I got a little spicy on some of them. So I'm just going to go down the list. If you disagree and you would not drop them, just let me know, shout it out, so we can give the people some different thoughts of whether, hey, just get rid of them or, hey, maybe hold on another week. So the first one is probably maybe my spiciest one is going to be QB Russell Wilson, 90.9% rostered. He has not looked the same since he's come back from this finger injury. You definitely, I don't think you can start him. So do you hold him in a 1 QB league and bench him and have another QB, or do you just drop him?
I'm not dropping him. He has a good matchup coming next week against Washington, I'm pretty sure. So he has 2 good matchups in the next 2 weeks. If he can't perform in either of them, then I would think about it. But, I mean, it's already late in the season. You rode him out this long through his injury, so might as well keep riding.
Yeah, I give him 1 week, and I wouldn't be as lenient. I would literally just give him Washington, and if he can't perform at least in a mediocre fashion for your fantasy team, then he's got to go.
Yeah, it feels gross even saying Wilson as a drop candidate, but you guys make some valid points.
All right, and then I got the other QB on the list is Derrick Carr, 68.3% rostered. All right. We got running back Darrell Williams, 82.6% roster now that CEH is back. All right. This was a fun one. Sorry, Buffalo Bills, but running back Zach Moss, 78.5% rostered. It's a 3-headed monster now, and monster's a strong word. It's a 3-headed backfield between Moss, Singletary, and Breida now. So, yeah, I just can't feel comfortable with Moss anymore.
They all combined to make one subpar monster.
Yes. I should not use the word monster. It's way too good for them. They got running back Dearness Johnson, 76.2% roster now that Chubb is back, and it sounds like Kareem Hunt might be back this week as well.
Yeah, if Kareem Hunt's back, I'd let him go.
Cool. To me, this is an easy one. I've been talking about him for a couple of weeks, but I feel like now's the time where everyone's going to believe me. Is running back Mike Davis, 70.2%.
Yeah, without Cordero Patterson, nothing. Like
nothing
you're losing snaps to Quadre Allison. You gotta go.
Yeah.
You know what's funny? You know what's funny to me? We talk about the running back position being so thin, and we've went through 4 running backs now, and we've said you can drop all of these, and then our waiver of running backs wasn't very big either. So we're just like, running backs just suck.
Yeah, it's rough out there.
I mean, for me, the least bad and call it a day.
Yeah. You need wins. So if I can't trust these guys, I'd rather just get some roster churn going and get some potential on my team. We have Chris Carson. So we've been talking about him for a while now. If you don't have an IR spot, obviously you probably weren't holding on to him anyway, but he's 65.9% roster, and we just found out he's done for the year. So unless we're talking about redraft. So even if it's like a keeper, I can't see you keeping Chris Carson in that spot anyway. So you can go ahead and drop him. And then we've already talked about the Bills running backs. But Singletary is at 58.9% rostered. You can probably drop him too. And now we move on to wide receivers. More Buffalo Bills to start off. Emmanuel Sanders at 75.6% rostered and Cole Beasley at 75.4%. They've had some really exciting games, but lately they've not been so exciting. Do you give them another week, put them on your bench? I can't see you starting them.
I still want to hold on to Emmanuel. Like, I want to hold out hope for Emmanuel Sanders here. And it might just be is more of a function of age and him wearing down at the end of the season, which is what I'm leaning more towards. But there are, like Tampa Bay in week 14, I think would be a really great matchup for him, actually. So if you can get to that first run of the week of the playoff there, I'd be interested.
See, I was going the other way. I think Beasley for a PPR standpoint to stay on my bench until he gets at Tampa Bay are good matchup, just to be safe, because Sanders in his good games, he scored 1 or 2 touchdowns in his really good games this season. He hasn't had one of those where he just has an enormous amount of receptions plus yards. He's either gotten the end zone or not, but Beasley has, where he's caught 11 or 12 balls. So that's why I would say Beasley over Sanders. But I respect what you said, Jake. I don't hate it. I have Sanders on a lot of benches, and I haven't cut ties yet.
It's too personal for me. I'm putting too much emotion into this.
Unless you're getting Elijah Moore, I'm holding both Sanders and Beasley. Why drop a guy just to free up a roster spot if you're not going to replace him?
Fair enough. All right, we got 3 more wide receivers to go to finish off the list. We got Marvin Jones Jr., 73.6% rostered.
I actually wouldn't with Jamal Agnew going on the season-ending IR. I would drop him, obviously, over Jones. But Jones has an extremely short leash, 1 week.
Fair enough. And Al Robinson, 72.8% rostered still.
Unless he goes on IR, I can't burn that bridge. It hurts my heart too much.
I would do it. See, you're in the emotion setting with Allen, like I was with Emmanuel. But I would, there's a couple of weeks ago where I felt comfortable dropping him, and it's just because his ceiling is so incredibly short. I can find anybody on waivers at wide receiver who can get me 10 points most weeks, so I'm not interested in keeping Robinson personally.
Don't play fantasy football with emotions, guys.
Good luck with that, but yes.
It'll leave a bench of Emmanuel Sanders and Allen Robinson.
And this last one's fun. So we've been talking about him for a while. He finally got below 50%. And then after last week scoring a touchdown, got him back up above 50%. We got Robbie Anderson at 54.4%. So false hope last week. Another dud this past weekend. Are we dropping him again, or are we trying to ride it out for another week with Cam?
Yeah, this might be a carousel of which wide receiver with the Panthers is actually going to be good for you. But obviously, if I had to bank on one, it's going to be DJ Moore. So, yeah, I couldn't find myself starting Robbie again, so I'll drop him.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat.
Awesome. All right. Well, with that, guys, that's our show. So, Jake, can you just remind everyone where they can find you and your content, and then feel free to plug whatever you want.
You bet. You can find me on Twitter. It's being a lurker at Jake Trowbridge. Do the podcast, Drinking Talking Fantasy Football is at Drinking Fantasy on Twitter. Ball Blast Football Podcast, everywhere podcasts are. The Harris Football Podcast, same deal. You know the drill. Just go look for the podcasts.
Awesome. And Toby and Alex, anything for you guys this week?
No, not too much. Kind of a light week with the holiday coming up.
Yeah, Wallpaper Wednesday as usual. Put out 2 last week. Put out 1 this week. So just look out for that. That's about it.
Perfect. And as we've talked about before, Triple Play Fantasy has a lot going on. We got 3 different sports we talk about: football, baseball, and basketball. 2 of those sports are still going on, and we're already talking about next season for baseball. A lot of content coming out. So please subscribe to our show, the YouTube channel for Triple Play, so you don't miss any of that great content coming out. We just added on a bunch of new baseball writers as well. So be on the lookout for a lot more content. As for our show, we'll be back next Monday, 8 p.m. Talk about week 13 already, which is insane. We'll have another great guest as well. And again, we just hope you guys all have a great Thanksgiving. Enjoy the games if you're off. Enjoy some time with your family. Have some good food. And hopefully we get you another win in fantasy football and get you into the playoffs. So have a great night, everyone. Thanks again.